Hey, my name's Adam. I'm a first-time home buyer and I want to talk to you about property taxes. If you're a first-time home buyer, I want to share with you some tips and some tricks that could hopefully not have you living the same experience I went through. Property taxes definitely caught me off guard, but there's a few ways you can avoid them and minimize the impact, especially if you're smart about which home you buy. You look at past values and you also use homestead and other exemptions to your benefit. So let me just tell you about my story. I bought a home about 5 years ago, currently the one that I'm sitting in. I love it. I used a bunch of mortgage calculators to get my mortgage figured out, and I knew my range. I knew I could be anywhere from 200 to 250K for a home. When I went and bought my home, my mortgage was affordable. But then all of a sudden, a year after purchasing, I realized that my property taxes went up 80%. Whoa, didn't plan on that one. This all happens because of a thing called assessed value and another word, taxable value. These are two words that are commonly used when talking about property taxes. See, most homes that have been bought and have been held for a long time don't have a very high taxable value. And this is because of homestead and exemptions like that. A home can only raise in taxable value usually around 3% each year. The issue is, and what most people won't tell you, especially a realtor or any sort of Google expert, is that the county can reassess your taxable value and your assessed value because you purchased a home. And they can reassess it for really whatever they like. There's no limit. And that's exactly how mine went up about 80%. To kind of explain what happened to me, the person who purchased this home before me had held it for roughly 10 to 15 years. They purchased the home for around $80,000. Because it was such a low number, $80,000 and $90,000, the home did not raise in value as fast as the housing market did. When the county would give out its assessments each year for what the home was worth, it was nowhere near what the market was. So you take that and then you couple it also with COVID and the housing market booming and going through the roof. And this is exactly why I had an 80% increase to my taxable value, because the house that I bought was only taxed at about $100,000 to $140,000. But when the county saw that I bought my house for roughly around 250K, they thought, oh, this house is worth a lot more than we thought, so let's increase it so that we can make more money. That's how property taxes work. And so they increased my assessed value to roughly about $210,000. Like I said, my assessed value went from roughly $120,000 to $150,000 up to $210,000. My taxable value was roughly $100K, and it went up to roughly $210K. So the way that those two words work, assessed value and taxable value, assessed value is what the county thinks your home is worth. Kind of like when you get an assessment when you buy a home. But your taxable value is the important one. It's built from the assessed value, but your taxable value is what you are actually taxed at. So your taxable value can only raise certain percentage each year. If you have a homestead in your state or county, it will raise about 3%. Usually if you don't have a homestead, it will raise roughly 10%. Now, this is if home prices just keep going up and up and up. But when I bought my home value, my property was reassessed, and that's how it went up 80%. So you might ask yourself, what can I do to avoid this? And I wish someone had told me that before too. Definitely the best thing you can do when you ever buy a home is if you have homestead in your county or your state, go for homestead. Homestead essentially means this is my house. I live here, I don't have another house, and this is my primary residence. You know, when people have a homestead, it means that they're supporting the economy, they're working in the local area. It's good for them to live in that area. So the county wants to take care of those people, and that's why they have a homestead exemption. Usually to qualify, you need to live in your house for more than half the year, meaning it's the majority residence. So if you have multiple houses and you live in one of them for more than half the year, that's your homestead. In our county where I live right now, your homestead exemption means that your taxable value can only increase by 3% each year. That's a pretty good number. And that's something that people can afford. An 80% increase, people can't afford that. And divided over 12, it puts a lot of more money on your mortgage, especially when you bought at the high end, like I did, of your range. Another thing you can do to be smart about property taxes when buying a home is always look at the tax history. Now, this is sometimes misleading, But most of the time, you'll see that a tax history, the value is nowhere near what the market is actually putting the house at. For example, there could be a home that looks to be about $250,000 depending on the market. But if the owner lived in the house for a while, its taxable value might be much lower, roughly 80 to 90K. This is really good for the person who lives in the home, but this is not the greatest for the person buying the home. Because once your property gets reassessed, your taxable value will now be closer to the price of the house that you bought. So if you want an accurate estimation of what your property taxes would be, you want to find homes that actually have a taxable value that's close to the actual price you'll pay. For example, I would say if there's a 50K range above or below the price you're going to pay and the taxable value, you can have a pretty solid estimate of what you'll actually be paying in taxes. The third thing that I always try to pay attention to too is whether you live in the county or you live in a city. Being smart, it's best to live in a county, and the reason being is because the county will tax you. You can't avoid that. Everyone lives in a county. But living in a city is optional. Usually you can see this by looking at street signs and seeing if it has your county logo on the street sign or the city logo. If you live in a house that's in the city, you'll be taxed by the county and the city at the same times. So you want to be very careful before you buy a home. Is this located in the city or the county? And if you're going to buy a home in the city, you probably want to look up what is the tax? How does it work? Am I taxed for anything out of the ordinary? And what is the usual amount? Sometimes city taxes are not much at all. It's mainly a couple of percentage points. But county tax and city tax on top could add up to a lot of money. You want to be careful about that, especially if you're buying a home where the taxable value is nowhere near what you're going to pay for the house. So, property taxes. Overall, you want to be very smart because they could be the thing that creeps up on you. If you're using a mortgage calculator, it's probably most likely using the old property tax that the house currently has, not the new tax that the house would be assessed at. So you want to leave a little bit of wiggle room, and you don't want to be buying at the high end of your range, because if you do get reassessed for a high value, you might be paying a lot more on your mortgage than you ever planned to be. Before I leave, I just want to talk a little bit about my channel. I'm starting out a new channel where I want to talk a lot about houses, how you can add value to your home, how you can keep up with your home, maintain it, and how to be smart about buying a new home if you're a first-time home buyer. Like I said, I'm a first-time home buyer, and I've had a great experience. I really love my house. I want you to have the same experience that I've had, but maybe with a couple tips and tricks so that you don't get stuck in the same pitfalls that I did. If you like the video, please like it and subscribe to my channel. I really appreciate it, and I'll be posting more videos soon.